Coaches, for as long as there has been sports coaching, good coaching has been common sense. Good coaching has been applying principles, skills learned in training into performance, into games and matches. So, why do we need fancy terms like non-linear pedagogy and the constraints-led approach and ecological dynamics? Like, I thought I was a basketball coach, not an ecological warrior. So why do we need these expressions? We've had a brilliant response to our last episode with Jamie Monroe, who really opened our eyes to what's happening in lacrosse in the States and his progression and his learning as a coach, which was really open and really thoughtful. It was a great episode. So we want to double click on that. We want to take that further. We've got a couple of additional guests lined up in that space with some different ideas about applying things like the constraints-led approach. And in this episode, Mark and I are going to get really practical. We're going to help you through some of the applications of these type of fancy terms. We're going to clarify some things for you. It is episode 34 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast. Right, Mark. You were about to say something brilliant in the middle of the last episode. I'm certain of it. When your dogs went nuts. So yes. This is an entire episode dedicated to your dogs.
Yeah. So in essence, where I said press mute and the dogs were kicking off because anyone knocks on the door. So if you didn't hear on the mic, it wasn't me excusing myself to not reply. It was because generally I'm hearing this crazy dog kicking off because of the box. So there was a few things I wanted to add that I didn't because I pressed mute. So the question from Jamie was when I was saying I'm not a purist in how it sits. I think it's more an integration. Jamie was asking a great question of, specifically. And I only got to the part about, I have no issue with, in a timeout or a quarter or on a hot one from the sideline, and it's clear the athlete doesn't know, is to tell, seek element. But that wasn't the only element. What I was going to say also was I have no issue in if you're doing a slow walkthrough that could be 10 minutes, if you're just sharing a principle of play or a certain tactic where you're just like, okay, let's just walk through it. So long as you're engaging the athlete, I was saying, okay, so if you're seeing this now, we move here, what options have you got? What if the athlete in front of you does this, the opposition, what options are you seeing to get them to engage at a slow speed, just to help them understand a principle, which is very different than when they go there, you go there. We're not asking that at all, but it's just the understanding. Also, an example is they've got no issue with saying, oh, freeze, where you just blow the whistle and that means freeze. So everyone stood where they are, and then you go, okay, what are you seeing? Look around, where's the space, where's the opposition, where are your options, and have that quick discussion. So there's a lot of elements where I wouldn't call them drills, I call them breakouts, where we clearly see we're attempting to manipulate the environment, the situation. It's not connecting with someone. We're doing hot one-to-ones from the sideline. We're bringing a player out. Okay, what are you seeing? What options? There's something that's missing, or there's a conflict within the player's perception. I've got no issues with stopping play and just having a breakout, as I call it, and go, okay, let's just seek clarity in this. And it may be just language. Do we even understand when we're shouting a word, what that means to me when I hear it, and what I need to do in action? All of a sudden, there's a bit of grey. Okay, let's go through that now in this situation. There are elements where traditionally that would not be seen as acceptable with many purists in constraints-led approach, but for me, I think they're totally acceptable within the integration of great coaching.
I mean, I've had some great coaches. I've had some terrible coaches. I've been playing and coaching basketball for nearly 40 years, actually. And I can remember in the late 80s, early 90s, I had a brilliant coach who was an English teacher. He wasn't even a PE teacher. Didn't know his pedagogy from his elbow. And we did some drills, particularly on-air drills with no defense, that really helped me to understand the principles of play. Now I feel like, is that old school coaching? Am I doing something wrong if I do that? He would also do things like when we were shooting, he'd say, okay, for the next minute, shoot the ball with twice as much arc as you currently are. I'd be like, why? I still don't quite know why, but I guess that's I don't know, that's variability or something. He'd say shoot from a different spot every single time and with twice as much arc. And then he'd say shoot with half as much arc as you usually do. And he's not never heard of ecological dynamics, but this stuff's been going on for a long, long time. And at the end of the day, our podcast is called Don't Tell Me, Show Me, because we want to see athletes on the court or pitch performing their absolute best and applying what they've done in training. That's what matters. And if when I get confused, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but when I get confused here as a community coach, as somebody who's on the ground working with amateurs, I just think, what does the game look like? What are the people that I'm coaching? What do they need to do better in the game? And then how can I do something close to that right now in my practice?
And that fits, Simon, into that principle of a great coach managing their state, scanning the behaviors of software and the hardware, and how quickly can they identify the source of an issue, not the outcome of an issue. They're seeing somebody making a wrong tactical choice or whatever it may be. Where's the source of that? And then choosing interventions for the source with the point of, I don't want to stop play. I need to get athlete engagement connection. So is my intervention effective? And then knowing how to step back and say, right, let's see now if it's transferred into play, whether that's in choice, execution, and scanning and communication is reaction to words, actions. So there's always begin with the end in mind. It's always, okay, is this transferring to the gameplay? And not in short-term recall, but has this now had an impact? Which is very different than, and this is what I think we need to be careful of. You and I are not ever saying, well, you shouldn't do that, you should do this. What we're saying is put the camera on yourself, check data, even overt covert recalls. You put interventions in. How effective have they been? Without bias, without going, oh, yes, I'm looking for success. No. Check back, see. If things are not working, you're not setting the transfer, don't blame the athletes straight away. Go, they're not listening to me. Start looking at, okay, why? Why is it not effective? Okay, what other options? And start exploring those other options. And that's when we get into, let's seek best practice from others. Let's seek ideas and strategies. Okay, let me commit to that and give it the respect it needs, not just a one-off, without bias. Okay, is that shifting me? Understanding if I'm going to commit to something new, my skill level may not be very good in it. So therefore, I may not execute it very well. So set fair expectations for me to grow. And I think this is the challenge when we're asking coaches to change in the same way as we're asking athletes to change. No, it's for the right reasons. No, it makes sense. So you see the value in it. But understand if it's new, you may be a bit not smooth. It may be a bit unusual for you. You may not get it right first time. So am I give it the time it needs? Have I shared with people explicitly, like, I'm committing to this. I think it's really could be really of value to us. This is why, but it's new. So I need your support within this. And then we review and then we grow. And I think in the game of even grassroots and definitely elite, but even in grassroots, if you've got parents expecting results or parents expecting my child to be more minutes than somebody else, or be first on the list of who goes on the pitch or the court, I'm dealing with that. And even am I dealing with, well, we need to be finishing top 4 in the league. Now, if I'm feeling that as pressure of expectations at grassroots, which is a little worrying, but it's reality, is now, do I want to change? Because I know I'm not going to be good at it. So therefore I'll just stick with what I know. So we're not saying get rid of this and you should be using this. And we're not saying, yeah, it's great, just do drills, just tell people where to stand. We're definitely not saying that. But I think there's this principle of stepping back, understanding, why do I do what I do? And I think you and Alan have shared some great little statements on this. But then actually look at it and really, without bias, start checking. Well, is it effective? And are there ways it could be more effective? Not, I've got results because I've done it that way in the past. Yeah, but could you get better results? And these are different people, different times, different situation, different capability. So let's explore and to see if there's other ways it can enhance what I'm already doing.
Yeah. And there's a temptation, I think, to start to believe that these how methods, these like how to coach, let's call them methods, that they can somehow replace the what to coach. They can replace the technical tactical. Well, you don't need as much technical understanding if you use this how-to methodology. And I can see the logic in that, because all else being equal, if you're gonna be doing the wrong technical content, let's just say, better to do it in some sort of game than in some sort of on-air drill. So as a sort of lifting your minimum standard, lifting your baseline, I can appreciate a constraints-led approach or a games-based approach, or these types of things can be better than drills. So I've definitely taken that. but they're not a substitute for the ability to stand back, observe, and be able to see, as you say, the source of the issue. Because I've seen a lot of coaches applying the constraints-led approach really well. Like, I'm not an academic, so maybe I'm not a very good judge, but just to my eyes, thinking there's some really interesting things, really creative things that they're doing there. But their team has got some technical and tactical issues that they're just not addressing because they actually don't have the what knowledge to match the how.
Let's throw some tangible examples on that, Simon, just on it, because it's an important point. I think some people have heard that but go, well, give me some context. So and I'll throw some, then you throw some, Simon, on just great examples of context. Context maybe see that they're not making good tactical choices live in open play. And you're thinking, well, they don't understand the tactic. But the source may be, they might understand the tactic if you draw it on a board, but they're not looking for where the options are within their role. They're not fully understanding their role off ball, for an example. So therefore, they're not understanding where they need to shift or move to allow the person with the ball or about to get the ball to have an option. So the source of that would be they actually don't understand their off-ball role in these situations. So it's finding, if that's the source, then your interventions need to be there. Your interventions don't need to be just let's adjust the parameters of, where they can pass, or can they pass, or do they need to dribble, whatever it may be. If we're saying, well, if you're not understanding your role off ball, then there's a source. So let's spend a bit of time clarity within that side of things. Another great example would be, and it links back to something I said a few minutes ago, is we haven't clarified when someone shouts something, whether it's in defense, midfield, or attack, shouting words. Do we all understand when I hear that word, I know for me within my role, that's what I mean to me, and that's what I'm going to do. So if there's a little bit grey there because they've come from a different team or they've moved up the age groups and it means slightly different, then there's going to be confusion. So then it would be, hang on, stop, let's just have clarity. What are the things we're saying in these situations? Let's draw them on a board. Okay, if you're hearing that, what does that mean to you? Okay, so what are your actions off that? So then we go, I thought it meant this. Great. So there's a bit of grey here. Right, let's see clarity. No need to use all this nonsense stuff. These are the calls we used. Keep it simple to start with. But when you hear it, this is what it means. And these are the actions off it. Right, let's go and play that. Then you put them back into that gamification. So there are a couple of examples. Have you got any tangibles?
Yeah, I'll give you something that I've learned over the years. This is kind of penny drop moment for me in my coaching of basketball. So I would do something like, if we are not getting enough defensive rebounds, so the other team is attacking, they're shooting, they're getting their own rebound, and then they're shooting again, which is obviously a very big problem in basketball if you're facing that. So in the past, I would see the problem as rebounding, and I would do an activity based around rebounding. I might manipulate the scoring system. So in our practice games, if you get a rebound, you get an extra point or something like that. So I would totally emphasize rebound. I might use a constraints-led approach. Now, I could do that really well. So I might play a game with some conditions, etc. I might manipulate the space to encourage more rebounding. So there's more rebounding in this particular game, etc. So is that good coaching? Compared to what I've learned, which is that frequently the teams I've coached, when they've had problems rebounding, it's actually because the players close to the basket are frequently having to leave the basket area to go and defend somebody to go and help a teammate who's been beaten. So therefore, by leaving the basket area, they're leaving that area open. Somebody else might rotate into that space, but if they happen to be smaller, then they can rotate into that space, but a bigger player is jumping over them and getting the rebound. So the origin of that problem of rebounding is actually out on the perimeter, where the people who are defending the ball are getting beaten and forcing their teammates to be out of position. And if I see that, I see that as the source of the problem, then the activity I do in practice the next day is about defending the ball, and that fixes our rebounding problem. And if I did on-air drills or maybe one-on-one, and it's not this modern methodology, but it fixes that problem, I've probably made a bigger contribution to my team's performance than in option A when I did a CLA, but I did the CLA on the wrong things.
Yeah. And that goes back into, I've seen so many different sports teams that they feel they need to get the ball into the shooting zone. And I'll say shooting zone because it's so different variables to every sport. So they're so focused on getting the ball forward once they get into midfield, mid-court. What they're doing is they're just making that area so tight and closed, no one can actually get a shot off anyway, because they're caught up in that, as opposed to, am I looking back? Actually, at this point, I can pull the ball back, because that's going to pass it back to somebody that has space that can look at another option, because they're seeing the big picture. I'm a bit closer. But understanding that's great to do, and actually often that's the more effective to do. So when we're seeing, why the ball going in, why are we so caught up around and we're not getting scoring options? We're getting the ball close, but we're not getting scoring options. Is maybe understanding with that player is why are they keep moving the ball forward when actually a smarter choice would have been to pass the ball back. So then could the source be understanding of that? Coach wants me to get it forward, or could it be I'm scanning forward, I'm not scanning back, and seeing an option is to pass back. So I won't know that unless I really did a hot one-to-one with that player and say, okay, talk to me what happened over there. What did you see? What option to identify? What influenced your choice? And from that, then I go, aha, either you didn't see, so that could be a source of an issue of scanning, or you might have seen it, but your understanding of that would be a smart choice, or a combination of both of them. So that's another example of, actually, we could do all the constraints in the world if we want, but actually, that's not going to solve the source, because what we may be doing is go, well, that's forced them to pass back while the constraint's on. But actually, when we can take the restraint away, they're still moving forward because they haven't understood, actually, that's a smart option. We've just manipulated the environment to get them to make a different choice. But their understanding of why to make that choice may not have been connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I came to the CLA via a games-based approach, via small-sided games, which seemed to be the predecessor or some of the earlier language before constrained to afford became an experience. Yeah. Like, I completely subscribe to that as a worthwhile way of coaching in a lot of situations. But for me as a community coach, telling me to constrain to afford is just, what? Like, I just can't. There's so many big words in here which seem to be used so that other people who understand those big words can nod at each other and go, yeah, you're a good coach. Yeah, you're a good coach. You know what constrain to afford means. So does it really mean...
Or to win an argument.
Yeah, exactly. Who's got the biggest words or the nicest phrases? But if you reframe constrain to afford as something like give them different opportunities to make decisions, now I go, oh yeah, right. Well, now my brain is open to, how can I do that? Whereas constrained to afford, my brain closes down because I sound like an idiot if I don't know what that means.
Yeah. And if I could add another one to what I was just saying there, because I'm listening to you, there's another one, just to help for the listeners. Another one based on that passing back situation. And we've looked at scanning, or we looked at my role of what the coach wants me to do. Another element may be technical confidence. And maybe actually you're asking me to pass, say if I'm the left, I'm right-handed, you're asking me to pass back. That's me using stick or left foot. I'm not confident of passing back from that side. So that's why I see the value of it. I'm scanning. I see that as the best option, but I don't want to do it because I might muck up. So technically, so again, if that's the source, we can put in interventions to increase that person. So that's where a constraint may come in, that maybe, or it may be a breakout. Let's just do a few of them more in the warm up, but end stage warm up, making sure that player gets a few of them in end stage warm up. So it's gamification of the warm up, which is another element that I really like.
Yeah, I also think about the concept of opportunity cost. So what opportunities are we missing out on because we're doing this particular methodology? And I think there is quite a high opportunity cost with drills, especially unopposed drills, if you're using them in precious practice time. If you're a community coach or a youth coach and you've got 4 hours a week, even 6 hours a week, and you're doing a lot of drill work, for me, there's a really big opportunity cost. So that's where I think any sort of games-based approach, any constraint, in any variability, I'll use that word, any variability to that is going to be a big step in the right direction. But if my 16-year-old daughter who plays basketball has got a day off school and she's sitting on the sofa and she chooses instead to go out into the back garden and shoot 100 free throws, which is just repeating the same motion, the opportunity cost is very low because she was either sitting on the sofa or she was shooting hoops in the back garden. Now, you could say add some variability to that, change the distance and all of that. Yeah, but she's still unopposed in the back garden. You're telling me that's why I shouldn't encourage my 16-year-old to go in the back garden and do some unopposed mucking about.
I think there's a basketball player some people might know, this Curry guy.
Yeah, Steph Curry.
So he does a bit of that,
Yeah.
So, and here's a funny old point. I know people that hate that stuff might go, well, that's not what making him great. But this is the point of, as you said, there's a big difference going, for the whole of a session, we've just done drills where there's no thinking, there's no connectivity, and I could have been doing something so much more effective, but still facilitate that increase in a certain movement pattern or pass, whatever it may be. So this is where the smarts comes in. This is where that understanding is there are far better ways of use of our time, but we need to understand that and be confident in doing it. So this is where I think you and I are in agreement. There's nothing wrong with doing some repetitions, and I'm a great fan of that last phase of the warm-up, getting into, okay, let's start bringing them in, and then we're kind of literally last phase, we're opposed, and actually we are doing those variants, but we're targeting the areas we want to develop and focus on. So I think anyone could do that, and then we're getting into, okay, where's the source of an issue? Is it a team connectivity understanding issue? Is it an individual? Okay, so how can I manipulate the situation or put energy and focus? And this is where individual work-ons work really well. Is, okay, so for you as a player, I'm understanding I'm struggling to pass left. I'll just make something up simple, whether that's foot or holding something in my hand. So then we can put, okay, so for you, when there's an opportunity where there could be a pass forward or pass back or dribble, I want you to always choose in this situation, if it's an option, to do the pass to the left. So I'm not killing anyone else. I'm not killing the game, but actually I've just put in a little variable in there. And in fact, it happened to an international Wales player who was playing for Bath, that when he was put under pressure and he was at one of the backs, he'd always kick the ball. He'd never pass it or run. So we said, okay, you can't kick. If there's an option that to do a pass or a run, you've got to take one of them. It's a really simple thing to do, but we've identified he kept doing that. So we took that option away from him. So there are some simple things you do in gameplay that aren't difficult to do, but still facilitate an enhancement for that individual player without compromising the team.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Mark, we want to keep this episode short because it's such a heavy topic. So I think we should pull out some key ideas here. Something I'm taking from you is that the intervention should match the source of the issue. And it doesn't matter how fancy your intervention is. If you're applying that intervention to the wrong source of the issues you see, then you're just limiting your results. And we should really start with, how are we scanning? What's my state? So am I filtered? So when I'm seeing something like a particular player or something that I've got some conflict with, and they do something that I perceive to be wrong, is that because my state is looking for that player to make me do something wrong? Whereas this other player that I'm getting along great with, my state is applying a lens where I'm looking for them to do something right. So starting with my state, and if I can get that neutral, then scanning alongside doing all my coach development and reading and watching, listening to amazing podcasts to build my knowledge so that when I am scanning, I can see things. So state scanning with a background of knowledge, that's going to enable me to find out the source. State, scan, source, then pick an intervention to match it.
And if I add a bit of texture in there, expectations. So, and that will impact state as well, is making sure, what are my expectations for this team, where they are, or for this individual player? So an example would be, and I've seen this at all levels, is you've never seen this player execute this choice or execution at this level of opposition ever in practice, ever in a match. And now in a match, I'm getting wound up because I'm not seeing them do it. But I saw them do it in practice against a lower skill opposition, my teammate, and all of a sudden I think magic's going to happen. So if my expectation's wrong, that's going to have a reverse negative impact on my state, but also that's going to stop me looking at the true source of the issue. So there are some impacts in there. And I think, I mean, my members area, there's a whole lot on interventions, but let's get really focused on what interventions can we do, because the more interventions you have without stopping play is going to put you in a real confident position, and that's where those hot one-to-ones can come in. That's why I love sometimes just using a phone, or I'm recording that 30 seconds because I'm seeing a trend, a little hot one-to-one with player, because my focus should always be, I want to understand what they're thinking. That helps me support them in the intervention. Just go through, okay, so talk to me what happened over there. What did you see? What options did you identify? I'm listening. What influence your choice? I'm listening. And now I just play back that 20 seconds. Can you just look at this? Do you still think the same? And often that little thing that anyone can do, you can see the player going, oh no, it's that. I didn't, because they're self-awareness, a bit like a coach. So there's lots of little tools that don't have to stop the whole of play, that can understand where the source of the issue is, and then how can I support that. So I think that links into the same as an athlete and coaches fits for. There's some stages. Understanding there's a problem, everyone I think can do that. Understanding the source of the problem, some people aren't as great as that. Understanding the solution, again, bit lower the bar now. Execution of the solution, have the courage and confidence to commit to it, again, a little lower bar there. So if we look through those 4 stages, really review yourself as a coach. And I ask the athletes this as well, is where are you good? Where are you every time sometimes? So the earlier on where you go, actually, I'm not very good there, I'm a bit inconsistent there, I'm okay with this person, not this person. That's where your energy needs to be to enhance you as a coach or an athlete. So coaches may see that as athletes. Okay, I'm seeing you spotting the problem, but it's quite clear to me you can't identify the solution. Okay, well, let's put an intervention in there. I can see you're identifying the solution, because when I pull you off, you're telling me, but I can see you're not acting on it. So where's the barrier in acting on it? Let's put the intervention in there. So that fits to your point. You're talking about state scanning intervention, Simon.
Yeah, great. Right. Let's get to rapid fire, and let's just do 2 or 3 each and make these short, because people are finishing washing the dishes and they're arriving at practice, or the dog walk is nearly finished. So rapid fire, we've covered quite a few things here, so we don't have to constrain ourselves too much, but let's give really quick and simple tips for coaches here. Go for it.
Well, so I repeat myself, record yourself, watch it back, see with what reality is what is actually happening, take your biases off any athlete, any team, and expectations.
Yeah, that always bears repeating. My tip is positioning. If you want to improve your scanning, think about where you're positioning yourself on the court or pitch. Don't get stuck next to your assistant coach, or vice versa, having a chat. Be at the halfway point, be on the baseline, be in the corners, and just keep moving, because your scanning will improve as your positioning improves.
When you're scanning, look at software and hardware separately as a self question when you're scanning. So is it a software element, someone's state, someone's scanning, confidence to commit? Is it a hardware, actual capability, technical knowledge, understanding, how they communicate and understanding keywords or acting on them? And if we're looking at them separately, often then it's easy for us to spot where the barrier is or the source, which allows us then to choose an intervention.
Great. Okay, this is my second and last tip, is apply some constraints to your own coaching that can improve your scanning. So 2 things come to mind. One is set yourself a timer during practice for, say, 3 minutes, and just don't talk. Just don't shout across the activity. Just do not mumble a word for 3 minutes or however long your timer is. Second is, rather than set yourself a constraint for 5 minutes or for the duration of this activity, you can only ask questions. So don't talk. It sounds revolutionary, doesn't it? For a coach, that's really hard. Don't talk. And if you do talk, ask questions.
I think be patient with any intervention you're going to put in. So if you're on an exploration now of any element where you go, right, I'm going to start doing this differently, I'm going to start adding stuff, you've got to give it a chance, not just for you, but also for the athletes as well. And also, if you're asking an athlete to do something differently, whether you've identified through a discussion of being inquisitive, that's the source, give them time to improve, give them time to get better. So remember, we're looking at first, is there a shift in behavior? Is there a shift in scanning? Is there a shift in commitment to a new action, long before we're looking at outcome, capability, execution? So if we're back to front on that, we're just going to be disappointed, frustration, and the athlete's going to give up. So it's really important to go through that process. And my final one, Simon, I know I'm not allowed a final one, but the other one is, if you want questions answered on what's that nonsense Simon was talking about with these long words at the beginning about, or Mark talked about that example, share it underneath here. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, get on the YouTube and just share the question in, because we're going to do a little mini series on this element. So to break down these long words from a practitioner, what they look like. So if you give us some examples, we can use that in context for you. And listen to the next 2-3 episodes, because we will get in people stood on both sides of the fence, but also people that are looking at the big picture. So I really think it's going to be helpful for a lot of coaches, managers, parents, and indeed teachers.
Yeah, and all of it is designed to help you coaches out there that are busy, that are time poor, that are maybe a little confused, or at least want to progress. It's all designed to help you. So just don't hesitate to get in touch.
And I would say, if you're listening to this, and you haven't listened to the previous episode, have a listen to the episode with Jamie, because I think he shared in a common language a lot of things that people get a bit confused with. So it will sync. So look forward to the next ones. But if you haven't listened to the last one, listen to that to link into this.
Great. All right. Thanks as always, Mark.
Thank you.